legalistic approach to politics, which seeks to only make these parties to be pressure groups for aspects of how to live right only, but have no care whatsoever on the holistic human being. The holistic human being is a human being who has to be ministered to in terms of their physical needs, who has to be helped overcome oppressive systems, who has to be helped overcome inequality, unemployment, and poverty. And the challenge has been for me that many parties have failed to actually be so appealing to a community that identifies itself as Christian that they end up, and I am among the people who actually was regarding my vote for a Christian party as a throwaway vote in the last, so I don't know how many years, because the vote was, let's keep these people in parliament, let's keep these people represented in provinces. Whereas, in fact, the vote should be a desire to have that party in office and doing amazing things. But unfortunately, so far, there hasn't been that ability to actually become an all-inclusive party that is able to actually present the truth with grace and be able to create space for everybody to identify, to feel that this is a party that represents them. So I think that's a big challenge. And I highlighted what the core problem is with kings or with political systems since the time of Saul, as corruption and self-centeredness and ruling on the basis of the will of friends and kin and family, as opposed to the will of the greater good, has been this same theme that is recurring. So yourselves, as you go into National Assembly, provincial legislatures, there has to be a distinguishing factor. That kind of factor that says these are people of integrity. They will not bow down to corruption. They will not bow down to these things which have become a thorn in the flesh in our nation. So in order to do that, there has to be an appeal with policies and programs that speak to the whole being and not just to be pressure groups, that represent only aspects when it comes to the controversial topics in our democracy. Last point. South Africa chose to be a constitutional democracy. Constitutional democracy is rights-based. So beyond the idea of being rights-based means you prevent the political system from becoming tyrannical, or you prevent the tyranny of the majority. And as a result of that, it creates this space where parties or faith communities need to present their message in ways that continue to reaffirm the preeminence of both the Constitution and, obviously, as far as they represent a kingdom that is advancing, and of that kingdom. So how do we remain relevant in permitting everybody to do who they are as far as identity is concerned, while at the same time graciously presenting the truth? I'd like to leave it there today. Thank you for the invitation. I hardly tap into this aspect of who I am, so I appreciate the opportunity to do so here.
Thank you, Dr. Mtimka. Of course, this comes because we now have each other's WhatsApp numbers, and I can see your posts on Sundays that they get so much more life. Thank you very much, and I hope that both the attendees and the political party representatives appreciated the message that you had for us. I will now just like to offer some apologies. Our package, which is great for the Christian community, that there's so much interest, unfortunately locks us in at 100 participants. But there is a Zoom, a YouTube page that I've now offered on chat, and that's accessible, and it is streaming live already. So you are able to access it. Mr. Winston Owen has now re-added that link on our chat section. And I do thank you, Mr. Owen, for assisting with some of the technical the challenges that we've just experienced shortly. I'm going to ask firstly for the African Christian Democratic Party, the ACDP, represented by Councillor Jamil Essop, to give us their 5 to 6 minutes introductory remarks about what it is that they are offering for this election and what it is that they feel puts them in the best position to be able to lead not only the nation, but particularly the Christian community in particular in government for this 2024 to 2029 time period. Welcome, Mr. Essop.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for creating this opportunity for the ACDP to engage with the Christians and with the vast majority of South Africans. I want to greet everyone that is on this platform and that is online in no other name but the mighty and the majestic name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The African Christian Democratic Party has been a political party that has been formed 6 months prior to the 1994 elections. The vision for the African Christian Democratic Party is very precise and clear. We want to see a righteous and godly governance in South Africa. Now, 30 years of our democracy has been gone down the drain, where we see after 30 years, South Africa seems to be at a trajectory where all organs of state have collapsed. Now, the ACDP has termed this manifesto the SOS manifesto, precisely because we have witnessed in recent times there is a heightened call for national prayer. There is a heightened call across the country where Christians are actually having much prayer and intercession, crying out to God for a mediator and for somebody to help. And so the ACDP has acknowledged these calls for prayer that have been happening in many provinces, in many cities, in many communities, and in many churches. You know, as we engage with different church leaders as well, we realize that there is a deep call for South Africa to change and to be established under a new government, but just not a new government, but under a godly and a righteous government. Why? Because the current government that we find is one where they also have Christian representatives, but obviously the manner in which they conduct themselves is where they put the party before their own values and their ethos. And so the ACDP has listened to those calls for ethical leaders, for leaders of integrity, those that, like the former speaker had said, will never be bought or sold. And so we have listened to those cries, but we also have not just listened to the cries of prayer and intercession and a cry out to God, but we have also seen cries in different forms of protest. We are seeing cries in the forms of where across most communities in South Africa, there are burning of tires. Recently in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, we have all witnessed, and Gauteng, the mass looting and the anarchy that had taken place in our nation that impacted negatively on our economy, impacted negatively on job creation, impacted negatively on investment, and it put the sovereignty of our nation at threat because it created an impression that politicians seem to be controlling and manipulating and dictating the course of this nation. We currently find in the province of KwaZulu-Natal where, you know, a leader who ought to be one who is behind bars has manipulated the judicial system and manipulated the laws so that today he can be one who is contesting the political spectrum. Now, all this speaks about where is South Africa 30 years down the line. 30 years down the line, we find a heightened corruption. We find crime that is increasing. We're finding our education system that is collapsing, where even the Department of Education seems to have diverted from their core mandate, now where they are meddling on curriculums that have an impact negatively on our future generations in terms of CSE and the Bella Bill. We find the health department collapsing in South Africa, where in desperation, you see today President Ramaphosa had signed the NHI bill. And that is an act of desperation without him taking into consideration the impact it will have on doctors, on the private sector, and even investors that are considering pulling out of South Africa because of poor decision. So you can see the ANC is desperate, and in desperation, South Africa has been led to a place where corruption and corrupt leaders, their voice seem to be louder than the voice of the righteous, than the voice of the ethical leaders, than the voice of those that want to see this nation prosper in God. And when we talk about God and we talk about Christianity, one of the fundamental things we have to understand is that in order for us to speak about God, we have to understand the lives of the people must be progressive. So when the ACDP is a representation of God, we also understand the importance of being practical in the ground. And so the ACDP has listened to their SOS calls. We have listened to the people calling for services, service delivery across every single municipality. We have listened to those calls. We have listened to the calls for order in South Africa. We have listened to the calls for safety in South Africa. Business is not safe. Our people are not safe. Young children are not safe. Women are not safe. Even men are not safe. Nowadays, when they go to fill their petrol tanks, they've been robbed or hijacked. And so there's no even order in South Africa where businesses are being looted, households are being broken into, and there's no service, there's no water, there's no electricity, there's no basic services on all structures of government. And so the ACDP has listened to the voices of Christians, and we have listened to the voices of South Africans. And we want to say that your call has come to our ears, and that's the reason why we have called this manifesto the SOS call. And we believe that with a 30-year track record, the ACDP is ready to govern. We've gone through 30 years of pruning, of shaping, and now we're saying to South Africans, you have tasted other political parties under the banner of Christianity. Some of them have been Christian leaders, but they have compromised their values. They have compromised their integrity. The ACDP has 30 years of a clean track record. And so we are here to serve South Africa. And we believe that when those wealths are given to us, the righteous ones, the ethical ones, we are able to do far more in terms of ensuring this government has better order, this government has better safety, and this government has better services. And so, Brian, in a nutshell, that's a summary of our manifesto, is that we have listened to the call of South Africa, the SOS call, and the ACDP is ready to govern this nation and lead it to a better future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Esop. Mr. Jamil Esop is a councillor in eThekwini municipality and has been for a number of years under the leadership, of course, of the man behind him and the man above him, of course. May I please welcome Mr. Zamachona from the ATM, who is the national spokesperson for the African Transformation Movement. I do apologize, I'm not going exactly according to the program. I'm just trying to speak specifically first to the currently represented political parties, and then of course we'll move on to the other political parties. Mr. Chona?
Good evening to you and All Saints this evening. I just want to get a sense, are you saying I must go on now?
Yes, please. You have about 5 to 6 minutes just for introductory remarks about your offerings that you have for us for this specific election, but also why it is that you feel that your party will best represent the interests primarily of Christian and faith-based South Africans.
All right. Thank you so much. I would like to greet you all in that mighty and wonderful name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I would like to say thank you for this opportunity and the platform that has been created. It is after we have seen the decay of society, after as the member churches, we have looked at how society has disintegrated to nothingness, and taking into cognizance the fact that dominion was given to mankind. And as the children of the Most High, we have a duty to see to it that the dominion that was given in Genesis chapter 1, verses 26, that nothing should crawl without us saying so, nothing should fly without us saying so, nothing should swing. Dominion, it is to have power over, it is to rule. And in 2024, how do we use the dominion of Genesis chapter 1, verses 24, if it is not also in lawmaking and jealously guarding what has been given to us so that we administer over the affairs of God? Now, it was after we had come to a realization that one of these days we have to account, when God asked us, what happened to the Eden I gave you, which was fully functional with an ecosystem that was fully functional? The nitrogen and the carbon cycle, what was on land and over and under the what could have been or should fly up in the sky, and what was on the waters and inside. That one day we'd have to give an account what actually happened to those. And our answer would have been, well, Lord, we did what we could, as we are spiritual giants. We prayed for those who do not even subscribe to your rules, and those who do not even recognize you. We prayed for them to do right by what you had actually given to us. And we said, it is time that the body of Christ rises up and we actually defend what has been given to us. If we say we are those people who are the heirs of the heavenly kingdom, the watchers, and those who are given the spirit of discernment over the earth, we need to do something. So the Messianic Council of Churches came together came together and gave mandate to the African Transformation Movement to actually take the baton in actually dealing with the challenges of this country. As we all know, from unemployment to poverty rate, to rand-dollar exchange, to issues around the escalating prices of fuel, load shedding, violent crimes. You know, when we get to violent crimes, my body shivers to think that in 2018, 2019, we're sitting at 58 murders a day. And in 2024 rather, we are now sitting at 84 murders a day, as if we are in a middle of a war zone. Well, technically we are, but it is not that kind of war that we have seen elsewhere around the world. And this means that there is a disintegration of society, and we have to respond to that. When you look at affordability, it is truly shocking. When you look at the inflation in this country, when you look at a food basket in 5 years, 5 years ago and 5 years now, you'll see that from 3,000, it has escalated to 5,000. When you look at the national debt in this country, and when you look at the repo rate, all what we see has been the disintegration of society. Now, what is the mandate of the ATM in changing the narrative and turning things around? Number one, we said it is not because we do not have men and women who are educated. It is not because we do not have men and women with struggle credentials. But we seem to have the kind of leaders who do not have or understand the importance of a values-driven type of governance. And where else can we find these values? And where else can we find the adherence to these values if it is not centered on belief, if it is not centered on the word of God, if it is not centered on people who understand that the people of God are important and therefore their prioritization, it will also be a form of worship. So we start there. The African Transformation Movement is offering a values-driven type of leadership, and that is going to go hand in hand with the moral regeneration within our society. You know, something that we do not often say is that, as we were talking about that murder stats, 47 of the 58 who were murdered a day were men killed by men. 8 of that 58
Mr. Chona, I think we may have lost you in that last bit when you were talking about the murder.
That is the
I would have
problem.
liked for you to round up. Sorry, sir. If you may just round up for us, please. We lost you there a bit. I think you may have had some network connectivity challenges.
All right on the issue of the common
Murders,
denominator and the
yes.
destruction of society. Yes. So I was just saying that what we do not often say is that there are 47 men who are killed mainly by men in 2018, 2019. When you break it down, the 58 murders a day actually translates to 47 men killed mostly by men, and 8 women and 30 children. But the common denominator is a man. But what is the strategy that we have in the rehabilitation of men, which is a preventative measure? The ATM says a restoration of human dignity and the protection of women and children from us men who are inclined towards that is to deal with the issue of moral decay and rebuilding of manhood in our society in a way that is God-fearing, so that we understand the value of other human beings that we are living with. So that becomes very imperative as well. But when we move from that, we're saying we cannot deal with this issue in isolation.
Yeah. We'll offer you another opportunity to continue. We do apologize. We were offering 5 to 6 minutes for the introductory remarks. We will offer you another opportunity to continue with the presentation, including in the question and answer session. Thank you very much, Mr. Chona, for the introductory remarks for the African Transformation Movement. As a reminder, we are convening multiple political parties who have a faith and Christian leaning ethos. And for those of you who are joining us on YouTube, just note that this is not to the exclusion of other faiths. This was an intervention by a member of the community who said, I am a believer and I feel that I would like to hear from political parties who likely represent my constituency, my community. What can we do to make that happen? And so we appreciate all of the 7 political parties who have engaged and said that they wanted to be a part of this session. For the next speaker, we'd like to invite, I didn't see her in the chat or joining us, Ms. Pops Thomas of the African Restoration Alliance. Is Miss Pops Thomas here by any chance? Your screen name may be slightly different from the name that I have on my program, so I do apologize for that. All right. We don't seem to have ARA represented in the room. You're welcome to raise your hand if you do join us at a later stage, Ms. Thomas. Would now like to call upon a representative from the political party Arise SA, Mr. Mpho Tagada, who is the president of Arise SA, the founder and president of Arise SA. Mr. Tagada, please give us your introductory remarks.
All right, thank you so much, and good evening to everybody who's on the call. As stated, my name is Mpho Tagada, and I'm the president of Arise South Africa. Arise South Africa truly believes that, first and fundamental, we believe that Jesus is coming back. We believe that we are in the last days, and we believe that as a result of that, there must be a manifestation of the full gifts of the Holy Spirit. When we study our Bibles in Corinthians, we understand that governance is one of them. And the Bible tells us that the government that shall be upon his shoulder. So it becomes very important that we see a manifestation of that. And we've seen a manifestation of the many moves of God within our generations. However, we have not really seen the move of God in terms of governance. So we believe that there is a generation of young people that God has raised to be able to govern South Africa and largely Africa in the way that it should be governed. And when we look at that, we look at unlocking the potential that sits within here and also ensuring that that potential can be exported to the rest of the world. When we talk about the end-time move, we talk about the fact that the gospel must be preached in every continent in the world. We talk about the fact that wealth transfer must happen. We must see a change within, the kingdom of darkness, losing that wealth and coming the wealth of the wicked that is laid up for the righteous. So we truly believe that it is through the deep inventions, it is through the physical manifestations of wisdom, where we see economies being built up from an economy that was basically struggling and a majority of unemployed people to a flourishing economy of prosperity and ensuring that many of our people have the great opportunities that they should have. We also believe that it is time for the manifestation of the sons of God, and we don't believe it only just in terms of it being in theory rather, but we truly believe in it being practical, where we are seeing new cities being built. New cities are things that are able to create much needed employment in a nation that seeks employment. We want to ensure that witty inventions, as written in the book of Daniel, are created, that technology is used and leveraged to ensure that we're able to bring employment to our people. And we in Arise South Africa truly believe that the young people, the youth, are at the forefront of this. We've seen a deep hunger and a desire for the move of God, especially amongst young people in South Africa. And we also understand that they've been to school, they've been to university to study democracy that happened 30 years ago. The fruits of it, we're seeing that these are the young people of today that have studied in different institutions and that have an understanding and a know-how of how to create the much needed jobs and how to actually steer our government in the right direction. We believe that they should be represented in parliament. We believe that they should be leading in the different spheres of business and in our economy. And we also truly believe that it is time that we see the wisdom that the Word of God speaks about being fully manifested. And we see that through the economy growing, the deep issues within the economy being fixed in record time. And we also want to ensure that deep technologies are brought in that are not only going to be scary or things that people say, technologies remind them of the 666 or the mark of the beast. But we believe that every single thing that exists on earth was created by God and the wisdom was given by God. And we want to use those technologies to be able to advance certain things like blockchain technology, which is stopping corruption and has been proven to be able to stop corruption. So we want to ensure that that is also brought forward. But most importantly, we truly believe that it's high time that Africa takes its place as the richest country in the world. We believe that South Africa is the richest country in the world. We believe that the minerals that we have been given to South Africa to be able to create all these amazing goods and services that we can sell to the rest of the world. So we truly believe in us being creators, in South Africa actually being able to create everything, utilizing its raw materials and being able to export to the rest of the world. And we also truly believe in the model that the church has been able to build in South Africa. We have a lot of strong churches in South Africa that their stories are not told, their stories are not known. And we truly believe that it's important that those churches grow and, a sense of revival grows from South Africa, not just revival of us meeting and singing in church, but also revival where we go out there and we build other struggling nations. We build other struggling countries, because with the natural resources that we have in our country, we begin to understand that truly we were created to be a leader amongst many nations. And the one important thing that we want to bring back is in our schooling system, we find that the fundamentals of Christianity have been ripped away. We want to bring those back. We want to bring back principles. We want to ensure that young people are taught the right principles from the Word of God from a young age. And we also want to ensure that we protect what young people are taught, that the education is not some theories about Romeo and Juliet meeting somewhere and fornicating, but these are actual theories that will teach them how to use the natural resources in their country to be able to develop industries, to build the economy, and to ensure that we create sustainable jobs in our nation. We also want to ensure that even in our national anthem, there's a beautiful line in our national anthem that used to say, Oza moya, Oza moya, O inwele. And I'm sure those that remember it, you can just let me know in the comment section if you do remember that. We want to bring them back because we believe that the moment the Holy Spirit was excluded from our national anthem, it was a very sour declaration that's not needed. And we want to ensure that we bring that back within our educational system and we bring it back in our national anthem so that the country gets to understand and have a consciousness that every day when we sing our national anthem, we're not just singing it, but it's an actual prayer that can change our nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tagada. Yes, you tried. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'd like to call upon the next speaker who's representing the GSA, Mr. Peace Ntloni. We'd like to hear in 5 to 6 minutes what it is that GSA has to offer to us as citizens of this country in the next election. You are muted, sir. If you can unmute, please.
Well, thank you very much for affording me this. Am I audible enough now?
Yes, you're audible now. Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you very much for affording GSA and an opportunity also to have a word amongst the other political parties of Galaxy that form part of this quorum of today. Indeed, GSA was formed for one objective: to see and make a government that is able to represent God and restore God in our space. We are predominantly Christian, led by political party that is a God-fearing party that believes in the principles of God, that was fundamentally established under God's principle, led by collective political ideologies that constitute God's basics, or should I say, the direction of God, led by, a collective mind of God's children. So, indeed, with that very same attitude, I wish to submit our position as GSA to say that we also subscribe in the narrative that GSA believes in a God-fearing society, godly government, God-fearing leaders, and obviously to also build a united, non-racist, non-sexual, democratic country that is led by God. You would have noticed that most of the speakers that already spoke, they've touched base in most, which I believe most political parties, believing in that. To restore South Africa from the way it is, if you realize how South Africa it was before, and I'm not saying that the previous government was a good government, but the fundamentals of God and how God was embraced in our schools, in our institutions. And yet, I remember the former so-called he was, in fact, the Minister of Education, the late Dada Kad Asmal, when he was promulgating on the removal of God in the, institutions of education, and promoting other types of religions. And you would have noticed what has been happening in our academic institutions, in our high schools, and in all the places where government is leading. So over and above, we believe that we should be able also to fight the matters of social justice, eliminate inequality, promote economic development, a system that is favoring everyone in South Africa. We believe that it's time for God. We've been sitting back as the Christian leaders who believe in the leadership of God. If I can just quote from the book of Proverbs 29 verse 2, where it says, when the righteous are sent in position of power, the nation rejoices. With that, it's very clear that nobody can be righteous without an embracement of God, or without Christ being the center in his or her life. Looking at how our government is been, doing a lot of corruption in our space, it's very clear that we don't have a God-fearing leadership in our space. We need God in our government. We need, leaders that will lead in our society with the heart of God. And obviously, the Christian has been sitting at the back. We believe that if Christians, get involved in all these spheres of leadership, in all these spheres of government, we'll see a different society in South Africa being led by the God-fearing people. We also believe that there must be an economic balance in our country. We know we don't need storytellers. We need people who are sound about the economic transformation. We need the architectures of economic transformation, people that will restore South Africa, will restore our economy. And we need a system that is going to eradicate or get rid of this, corruption that is taking place in our country. Because if you are looking at the status quo of South Africa as a result of the corruption, it's whatever that they are doing in that space is taking us back instead of growing the country. We understand what happened in the past in 1653 when the arrival of Jan van Riebeeck. Those are the heritage of our history. It's okay. But where are the economics, the architectures of economy that will drive this country and obviously come along with the new dispensation, the generation of the now, to close the gap and talk the language of the now than keeping ourselves to the heritage of the past. It's okay. But the country is distorted because of this. So that is our position, and that is our main objectives, and encourage, a peace and in our country, and obviously a united country. My time?
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ndloni.
Pleasure.
We appreciate your presentation. Can I ask the following, please, for our speakers, if you can just be cautious of the background noise, as it does interfere with the quality of the stream and of us being able to hear you. If you can just be aware of that. But other than that, we'd like to then also now welcome from Hope for SA, Mrs. Diane Rogers. Or is it Diane Kruger? Based on the screen name, my apologies.
It is Diane Kruger. Good evening again, and thank you. It is such a privilege to speak on the forum and also to speak to the people. So good evening to everybody. And yes, I'm Diane Kruger from #Hope for South Africa. So just a little bit of a background on us so that those who don't know us can understand us is we actually come out of a ground movement, Time to Rise, which is an apolitical movement, which in 2023, 300 men were called aside to pray and fast for the changes of the nation that's needed, where God saw that it was time to draw a line in the sand for South Africa with his people suffering so much. And out of that came #Hope for South Africa as a new wineskin. So we are fully separate from them. We're an adult child. Time to Rise is still apolitical. We are the political arm or the political movement, and very open to holding hands, of course, with all like-minded people. But we do believe that God wanted a new wineskin. He wanted new people. And if you look at the core or the leadership of our party, all of us are devoted Christians. All of us are either business people, one form or another. So we're not politicians. We are actually statesmen and stateswomen that have stood up for our country because we've seen that South Africa is burning. We've seen the bloodbath. We've seen what's happened to our people of all of the nations, the cultures, especially those in the poorer and the rural communities. And we've realized that unless we stand up and stand in the gap as children of God, we will never make a change in this nation. We are not career politicians. What we would like to do is usher in a godly governance, bring in the change. We have the blueprint, we have the people, we have the talents to do that. And then, I think Paul mentioned it, then we actually want to raise up the new generation. We want to be part of that. We want to come alongside of them so that Africa can go forward. So a little bit about us is that we are totally solution-based. So we already come with a plan to the party. So with our talents, with our knowledge, and with what we have, we believe that God has taken us on a path where supernaturally has grown this party in a space of 5 months, and we've seen it supernaturally grow. In fact, we can't even give you a figure right now of where we're at. It's growing so fast. But that's God's hand, not ours. Ours is to run alongside of the ark. Ours is to bring in a godly governance. And just a little bit about what we'd like to do if we got into parliament and what we'd like to do if we were majority. And I'd like to say this right from the beginning. People, big parties, flatline on 29 May. In other words, 29 May, we are all flatlined. It's up to the nation to decide, to put their cross, to decide who is going to govern, who's going to be the next big party in this hand. And if we wake up and we go with our values and our principles and our belief systems, we are 85% Christians in this country. We can actually turn this amazing country around. We have the resources, the human and natural resources to do it. And as a party going into government, one of the first things we are going to do, obviously, is to stop corruption. It's a huge thing. But we are going to look at our governance and administration. We are going to take that whole thing because we're looking at a value chain system with value streams. So we're going to look at the government and administration, and we're going to put that right first. And that's going to feed into the social cohesion and community development, where we look on the ground level at the citizens, what their needs are, allowing them and teaching them how to be self-responsible and autonomous in governing the areas or the districts by themselves. We're going to look at the role of our justice system, the loopholes that they don't connect, the chain doesn't work properly right now. We're going to start putting those holes back. These things are all doable and doable quite quickly. And of course, our service delivery and our citizen engagement is going to be important. So we're going to allow the citizens to have a voice. We're going to allow the citizens to actually fire people who are not working for them in communities. The whole system is going to turn upside down because the government at this stage takes 50% of the tax money and the locals get about 10%. We're going to change that around because we want them to be autonomous. We want them to bring their own assets to the table, to build their communities, and to set up a community system that works for them, where families are primary and families the core. So we have a socio-economic understanding where we know that if we develop the social side, the economic side is going to grow. And on the economic side, we already have a book that lays out an economic system for this country that can put South Africa back on the top of the map. We have stewardship of natural resources. We appreciate what God has given this country and what has been stolen from us from the Western and European countries. We are taking that back. We are going to learn to take our natural resources, produce them ourselves, and then export them to make more money. We're going to build factories to create jobs. We're going to go onto the ground level to the citizen, where we can do assessments to see where they're at, what they need, help them to get into small business, SMEs, spaza shops, build their entrepreneurship. Schools, I'm passionate about schools. I could talk to you about that for about an hour. But from ground level up, building creative schools from 0 to 7, from grade 7 to 9, building capacity into the children to be able to choose a stream, and from there having technical schools, academic schools, creative schools, musical schools, so that by the time they go out grade 12, they already know what they want to do in varsity. To take our children and give them a gap year where they serve their country, and then to help them to go into varsity by supporting them. That's the kind of things we want to bring back. We want to look at our security and defenses. We want to close the loopholes of people crossing our borders that bring nothing to the economic value of this country. We want to look at our people on the ground that are put into houses where they cannot have safety, security, and liberty, because that is primary, core, godly given godly given purpose that we should have for each of us. And we want to build international relationships with like-minded people. So hashtag Hope for South Africa comes to the party, not just to go into government, not just for politics. Whatever happens, if God puts us in as majority, I'm going to say, you guys are doing a great thing, because we're going to allow God to work through us, bring in the talents and change this country around and stop all that bleeding. But if God puts us in as a minority, we will be the leaven that leavens the bread. And we will continue to, on the ground level, change our countries one citizen at a time. So that's what we bring to the party. And that's what we're passionate about, you the people, because we are part of you the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Diane Creer, for that presentation on behalf of Hope for SA. We'd like to welcome from the South African Rainbow Alliance, Ms. Hlamalisa, my apologies, Kubai. Ms. Hlamalisa Kubai.
Yes, good evening. Greetings in the wonderful name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ of Nazareth. We thank God for this invite as South African Rainbow Alliance. My name is Hlamalisa.
Are you able to put your mic, your camera on by any chance?
Yes, we do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Hlamalisa Kubai. Yes, I'm from South African Rainbow Alliance, which is SARA. SARA was started in November 2023. We are, I'm not sure, I am clear. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you and we can hear you. Yes.
Thank you very much. It is an alliance of a civil organization and churches that we believe in godly principles and values. As SARA, we want to have influence in our government, in the direction of our government, because we want Christian-based organization to lead so that we can have a voice as Christians. We think it is important as a South African Rainbow to have representation in our government so that we can have a voice as Christian. There's a verse that I want to read before we continue in the book of Matthew 9, where Jesus was talking from verse 26. He said, when he saw the crowd, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Here, Jesus was saying to the people, when he saw people just going up and down, he has compassion on them because they did not have anybody to lead. Like what we are seeing in our country today, there is government that is not even caring about us as Christians. As Christians, we don't have a voice. I'm saying this, we have a policy in SARA that talks about the relief of the churches. We are saying that during COVID, we noticed that government did not care about the churches. They granted the NPO the relief grant that was helping them. But when it comes to the churches, there was nothing given to the churches. And if we check as churches, we are the people that have morals. So what we are saying is that we want to represent the kingdom of God. And we also want that our churches must get a 10% from our annual budget. As SARA, this is one of the policies that we are pushing, that if we're in power, we'll have a voice to represent the kingdom of God, and says the churches must have 10% annually from the budget. As Christian, we believe that as Christian, we have the universal policies, like 10 commandments. In SARA, we believe that we must not kill, we must not steal. So that we are pushing that as SARA, if we go to power, we'll take care of our people, because we know that where there is God, people will be helped. And we have our GEA, which is stand for the growth. It stands for employment, accountability, and redistribution. But I want to focus on one thing of accountability. As we know that in South Africa, we have a government or leaders that are not accounting to anyone. They don't even care about the society or the people that they are leading. Accountability is aimed at addressing mistrust. Since we attained our democracy in 1994, our society has lost our leaders because of the corruption. Corruption has made this country to lose direction. We don't have accountable leaders anymore. In SARA, we need to restore moral clarity and leaders who are put in leadership on merit. In our list of candidates that we have submitted for National Assembly, we have everyone, all the people that are there. They are Christian and they are put on merit and they are competent. And also, they are people who are led by God's values and principles. So as SARA, we are saying, put us in power, and then we'll be able to lead you in a godly way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Kubai, for your presentation. We're going to move on to a question and answer session. And I'd like for anyone who would like to ask a question to either do so on the chat or to raise their hand, and we'll give you an opportunity to speak directly. We're going to take about 5 questions initially, and we'll ask the parties to respond in the order in which I, as the sort of chairperson of the session, will decide. Are there any immediate questions? I have noted 2 questions from the chat. The first one was directed specifically to the ACDP. One of the questions, Councillor Esop, if you could take that note, was why has it taken the ACDP 30 years to listen to citizens or to faith to Christians about the messaging and the work of the ACDP? Did it take a decline for you to now decide maybe it's time to walk back the journey of your party's reign and leadership? And then, of course, there was a question specifically around the type of messaging that you have for all the political parties. This is directed to all the political parties. What type of messaging is on your various platforms? Some of the comment was saying that some of the platforms don't necessarily speak about God or Christ, whether it be on social media or directly manifesto, and I'm not specifically sure which political party this is in reference to, but maybe all of the political parties could be able to then put us at ease in relation to that. Ms. Veronica Nube, your hand is raised. You can unmute yourself and speak, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Please allow me not to share my video. It's going to chow my Twitter. Just a quick question. I'm very impressed. First of all, let me really appreciate each and every political party that has taken the time to unfold their manifesto for us. My question might sound a little bit strange, reason being I'm not a male person, but I want to find something out. Is there any of the political parties that has got a clause or some sort of, I don't know how to put it, anything that speaks to the male seed of this country? We know that women, we do have grants, social grants, I don't know how to put that, when you know you've got a child grant. But we also do have single male seed who are single parents out there. Is there any political party that is actually looking into that? Or is it only because just a female person has got the burden of raising a child? Believe you me, we've got lots of male people out there who are single parents raising children on their own. Is there any other political party on this platform that is actually taking care of that? Thank you, Chair. I submit.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We appreciate that question. I'm just going to go through the chat before I go to our panelists to see if there are any additional questions beyond the 2 that I've noted. I think we have a question on YouTube that says, will you take hands with the ungodly? I'm not sure what that question refers to, but I think the political parties will be able to interpret. It's possible that it's talking about coalitions, about what types of partnerships you're willing to enter into or not enter into. So we have those 4 questions for now. We'll take these last 2 questions for this round. And Lucy M., you're welcome to unmute and ask your question.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Honorable. My question is to the President of Arise South Africa. I see the President of Arise South Africa had everything that you have said. And being the youngest president also, I just want to know what's your intake about collusion? What is your interest? What kind of a political party are you willing to collide with in terms of collusion? And to the party of SARA, you were saying that in one of your manifestos, you say that you are allowing young girls to hold guns. So I'd like to understand about that one while you're talking about the 10 Commandments. Thank you so much.
Say again, is it allowing guns?
Yes,
Sorry,
in
Daisy?
the
Okay,
manifesto,
done. Okay, they said they did.
yeah,
Okay,
God,
thank you very
so
much. Thank you. Lunts, I'm not sure how to read that one, but it's LUNTS. You may unmute and speak.
Greetings, hi to everyone. I don't know if I'm audible. Can you hear me?
You're audible, yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm not really sure if this will be an actual question or a statement, but one of the things that I would like us to pay attention to in order for us to probably get the ability to attract people again towards the whole Christianity, godliness, and in terms of rulership would be, firstly, when we look at the pandemic that we're faced with as young people, which would be the unemployment situation, and also what God is saying towards us as being unemployed graduates or skilled but not having labor force within the economy, and what is he saying about such things. That'll be an interesting take to hear, because it seems like it has come to a situation where it seems like we are not having solutions for such things, and which is not really the main case. And also the second thing would be in relation to how the government structures when it comes to money giving, just because we're unemployed or just because we are raising single parent children, etc. There is imali again, as my sister had alluded before me. But my thing is, I would like for us, should the Lord give us the opportunity to actually rule, I'd like for us to start changing the mindset of people to understand that it's not just about expecting we'll get a 350 rand or we'll get this and that, but for us to actually make them understand that if you're in the city, what is that you need to do? What are our roles and responsibilities? Even if I'm not in government, especially as young people. So I feel like if we can just focus on the unemployment situation within young people as graduates within the kingdom, I think that will really change the tide.
All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate the questions for this round. I'd like to ask, and I see our panelists have raised their hands as a matter of interest in terms of trying to respond. There is, before you go, Councillor Esop, from one of our panelists, I think it's, apologies, from the ATM. He, as I indicated, is currently having some challenges of connectivity, and because of there's no electricity in the area that he's at, I'd like for him to start first. If you picked up any questions or comments that you would like to engage with, sir, please can you respond in about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, so that we can enable other colleagues to also respond. Mr. Chona?
All right, thank you so much. I think it is very important, the question of dealing with challenges that are faced by men, which is one of the questions that was raised here. It is important that as we support 100% that women empowerment must be done, the wrongs of the past must be dealt with, but we should not get to a point where we tilt the scales so upside down the other way around, to an extent that now we have another pandemic that we're sitting with. Balance is very important. I agree with you, my sister, that balance is extremely important, so that we do not find ourselves in a situation that is going to cause more harm. And in doing that, it is very important for us to understand that one of the reasons we're dealing with this issue is that the economy is not growing. So even as we are embarking on a powerful project of women emancipation, but we're doing it in an economy that is not growing, which means that a reverse and a possible displacement of males in the system may be the unwanted and unintended result of this. This is why it becomes imperative that enlarge our territory, oh Lord, industrialization of South Africa. We can't be importing toothpicks and toothbrushes and washing basins. It's very important that we deal with that. Also, let us deal. The ATM is very clear on this issue, that we need not only to say people must plow fields, but agro-processing, especially towards rural areas as well, must be another form of poverty alleviation. Also, with mining. You can't be taking raw minerals and taking them abroad. They start seeing South Africans cleaning and bringing beneficiation with that, so that we enlarge the territory, more jobs. Also, let us deal with employers who are deliberately taking, hear me well, we are all children of God, but all 54 member states have their clear demarcation, permanent population, paying taxes somewhere, and electing governments because they are citizens there. Now, it is very important, the prioritization of the people of South Africa within their clearly demarcated space and adherence to the rule of law. If an employer intentionally goes for our fellow brothers and sisters from elsewhere in the world because they are trying to drive profits, we must be able to deal with that employer. Warning first, fire somebody if we have to, but also we must get to a point where we now say, if you do not want to adhere to the rules and regulations of this country, we will take that license from you so that you don't operate, so that we open the space in enlarging the territory so that more people in this country may be able to find employment. Also, lastly, maybe on the issue of employment, unemployed graduates. For instance, we just at the ATM dealt with the issue of environmental practitioners who are not employed, whilst we have a pressing issue of unsafe foods that are being sold in our locations. How can that be? So the African Transformation Movement is pushing for the absorption of all the necessary skills that we have so that we are able to protect South Africans from ingesting, in this particular case, unwanted foods, but at the same time absorbing our unemployed graduates. They have nowhere else to go, but they must find space and expression within the South African economy. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Zamachona. I let you go for at least another minute and a half, mindful of the fact that this may be the last time we may be hearing from you, given your challenges with electricity and connectivity.
Thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Councillor Esop. So the first question was for you. I think it was either here or on YouTube, essentially asking you. Your party has been in Parliament for the past 30 years. Why has it seemed as though you've been silent in the decline, and why should citizens respond to your message now?
Thank you, Brian. Brian, firstly, let me start off by saying that the ACDP is a political party that has not been formed because there are 85 or 80 to 85% Christians in South Africa. The ACDP was formed, like I said, 6 months prior to the 1994 elections. The ACDP president, Dr. Kenneth Meshwe, has been traveling South Africa since that time, warning the church of this particular day, warning the church and sending out this signal call for righteous, ethical leaders to get involved in politics and involved in government. Many of the leaders that have formed political parties, many of the church leaders today that have come out and said that it's important for Christians to get involved in politics were the ones back in the days who opposed Christian involvement in politics. So it's not that the ACDP for the past 30 years have been doing nothing. 30 years ago, we've been calling for the church to arise and to wake up. If it was not for the ACDP during the time of the formation of the Constitution of South Africa, when the ruling party was wanting for South Africa to be a secular state, it was the ACDP under Dr. Kenneth Meshwe that led a march to the National Parliament saying that South Africa should not be a secular state. And if South Africa was a secular state, then it means that all Christians had no opportunity or privilege to be involved in any spheres of government. There should be no churches in schools. There should be no churches in government organizations, and Christians should not be involved in any structures of government. So the ACDP, from the word go in our formation, have have been warning Christians of this particular day, where the one world government is wanting to take control of legislation. The one world government is wanting to take control of the Constitution of South Africa. What Christians are currently doing is they have woken up. They have woken up to the reality is that they have done nothing in terms of ensuring South Africa has a better future. And because they have done nothing, the only thing most Christians are doing is attacking political parties that have forewarned them in vision that this day is going to dawn upon us. And I believe that many Christians that are now awakening from the sleep and slumber should not attack political parties that have been protecting their interests, been protecting their rights, been ensuring that their fundamental godly values are enhanced and echoed in the corridors of parliament. But they should come back and say, we acknowledge the work of the ACDP. We acknowledge since 1994, it is the ACDP that have protected us. During the COVID pandemic, it was the ACDP that protected the church. It was the ACDP that fought for the rights of Christians. It was the ACDP that fought for the opening of churches. Whilst many Christians and pastors were succumbing to the pressure of government by closing the churches, it was the ACDP that stood firm and fought against the one world government and the one world government's authoritarian leadership that now is starting to see itself under the banner of the ANC. And so the ACDP has always been vocal, and we thank God that today the church is awake. The church is alive. The church acknowledges its involvement or its role to play in terms of governance. And so the ACDP wants to say that we've been here for 30 years. We've been fighting for Christians. We've been calling for the churches to awaken. We are not a political party that is built and manipulating people on 85% Christians. Before the statistics have been released, we have been here fighting for Christian biblical values, and we will continue to fight for Christian biblical values in an uncompromising manner. Even though many people will say that you are quiet, you are doing nothing, look at our statistics in National Parliament. It is the only party to represent the voice of the vast majority in South Africa. When pastors succumb to the pressure of government, the ACDP stands firm on biblical values, and we respect uncompromisingly the word of God. When government locked down the churches, it was the ACDP who said no. When government was forcing the vaccines upon the people, it was the ACDP who fought on behalf of South Africans. We went to court and we had victory. We protected the rights of the people. So the ACDP is not saying 30 years down the line, we're calling for an SOS. We're saying 30 years down the line, we have listened to the awakened church that has been sleeping and ignored us for the past 30 years. And we're saying to that awakened church, we have been here for 30 years. We are here. We are listening to you. Come, and as you have awakened, come and join those that are already awakened in the political sector and strengthen our hands, so that we will become the government of the day, and our voice will be louder to ensure that righteousness is exalted in the corridors of parliament. And that's where we are. It's not that we have been doing nothing. We're saying to the awakened church, join us and support us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for your response on behalf of the ACDP. Ms. Diane, you're one of the first to raise your hand in response to some of the commentary or conversation that was happening. What does Hope for SA say to some of the questions that have come up in relation to essentially, why aren't the Christian parties essentially joining hands? Why is there an absence of coalition or working together? And to what extent are you willing to compromise when it comes to being in government? Will power influence the ways in which you decide who to be in coalition with, or will your Christian values prevail?
100%. Thank you very much. We will not compromise our Christian values at any point. So we will go into government and we will certainly hold hands with like-minded people. So in other words, people that have the same beliefs and value systems as us, those are the people we will hold hands with, because we cannot expect God to stand in the gap for our country and to perform a miracle and to make a change if we go away from godly principles. So we will not compromise anything on God or Jesus Christ. That is a written law within our hearts, and it will stay like that. But we will hold hands with like-minded. And I just want to honor Councillor Jamil for his speech, and also for what ACDP has done, because they have at least brought almost just under 1% of the Christians into the party at this stage. So hopefully we can bring with us, and the other Christian parties can bring with them, some more of the Christians that have woken up, and together we can hold hands on the other side, and together we can make a difference. Because I always believe that if you have a boardroom and you have good CEOs around the table, you have 10 heads is better than one when you're going to make decisions. And if we can have a handful of like-minded Christian people around that table in government, we can make an amazing difference for God in this country. Because after all, this is about the citizens of the country, not about us. This is about making a difference for everybody and to usher in God's kingdom, so that we can be the light in South Africa, with the light and salt of the earth, which will go into Africa, which will become the light to the world. So on that one, yes, we will hold hands with like-minded people. We will never compromise the values, our Christian values. And then the other one I wanted to answer, the First Lady was asking about, what about the males? Who's looking after the males in this country? And I love answering that one, because I am a woman who's a businesswoman. I have a business. A lot of people look up to me and say, oh, you must be very liberated, etc. No, I'm not. Excuse the pun, but I'm a barefoot, pregnant and happy mother most of the time if I had my way. I go and work because I add to my family, and I add to the economy, and I have a good brain. But my husband would always come first in my house, and God first, husband, and then children. That principle will always stand, because it's a godly principle. And marriage between a husband and wife is also a godly principle. So one of the things we will be working on and be standing for is building healthy families, because if we build healthy families, and we can give preference to fathers, that they can actually become the father they're supposed to be, that they can have the backbone. I mean, I'm a woman and I love women, but I must say we've definitely messed up with our men from one point of view. I think they struggle to wear the pants these days, and we want to give them back to that. We want to let men be men again and women be women again. And that doesn't mean a woman can't stand up and rule alongside a husband or alongside men. But what it does mean is that we give the honor that God tells us we should give to the men in our country. So I want to honor the men of South Africa and say to them, stand up, take your rightful place, and step in to what you are purposed and planned for by God, so that you can be the backbone, and that the woman can stand by you. Because us women, we are strong. We're incredibly strong. When we say the men are the head, the woman's the neck, we turn the head. But the woman must know that she needs to stand alongside the man in this country and be that strength. So we would like to honor the men in the country. And where there are men struggling, we're certainly going to give them equal, if not preferential rights in helping them to stand up and be who God intended them to be. Because it's not about what I believe or you believe. It's about principles of God that will come and change our country, so that we can live in a country that we can have safety, security, and liberty. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those responses. Can we have Mr. Peace Anthony from GSA responding to the questions that arose?
Well, thank you very much once more for giving me this opportunity. And I'm not sure if this question was covered, but I think I will touch base on it, because I was meant to respond on it. I heard somebody was asking a question of, can unrighteous shake hands? What was that question again? It was a question from.
Will you be will you be taking hands with the ungodly?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to respond on that one. Look, from a position of leadership, remember, we are given a platform, or we are given an opportunity to demonstrate leadership and godly representativeness, if I may put it like that. I believe that, as from a Christian point of view, we are all saved by the grace of God. Obviously, no one can claim righteousness and judge others as unrighteous. The call of this nature, obviously, is to unite the nation of South Africa with a godly representative leaders that will demonstrate a godly government. So the nature of this kind is that we are called to all people, the unrighteous, the righteous and unrighteous, because we'll be leading the nation, for instance. We'll be leading people with different religions. Shall we then say it's because we are Christians, we're not going to serve the Christian community? The answer is no. We are called, and I'm not saying that for a disclaimer, any religion that is anti-Christian is unrighteous, but I'm just saying that as God leaders, we are called to serve everybody, and we should be demonstrating Christ, because Christ was a God servant, and he was called to transform and change nation, and that is our call. And as God Save Africa, as I said, that we also stand for God's principles and godly government. We believe that corruption also should be out of the equation, and can only that happen provided our government is occupied by godly fearing people, restoring God in our government organizations. Because as a result of this corruption, in our observation is that because we took God through the windows, or God was thrown out of the windows in the government, because the government departments and in all spheres of government, people talk less about God, and the observation is that the church has been sitting at the back. Now it's time for us to move forward and show the true reflection of God representativeness to the people of South Africa in all aspects, through godly principles, through accountability and trust and kindness and demonstration of love. And then obviously with all the reflections of Christianity to the non-Christians. To me, that is it's enough to say, for those who judge themselves as as non-righteous, because it cannot be a message that come from ourselves to say you are not righteous, because we understand the concept of salvation. We understand that it is by the grace of God that we stand firm and we proclaim that Christ is the King. As long as we exalt his name in all these spheres of government, and Christ be known and God be known in government, we believe that in the translation of a true government, in the presence of putting God as in the center of this going forward. You cannot have a corrupt country if we are led by a godly principled people, a God-fearing leaders. But for as long as we have people who does not understand the future of our generation, people that take NSFAS money and misuse it for different reasons, to me, it's an interpretation of saying that these people, they don't care about, the generation in our dispensation. For as long as we get one man that get billions, then those billions get to be misused. Yeah. Then we don't have government. But for as long as we can restore God in that space, we'll have a very strong country. Thank you very much. That is my submission.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was Mr. Peace Nhloni for GSA. Ms. Samarisa Kubai from SARA, South African Rainbow Alliance. What are some of your responses? And I know one of the key questions that you're going to be responding to is about the men, having heard your leader speak about that as a point on your manifesto that you're pushing quite significantly. Yes, Ms. Kubai.
Thank you very much. I've heard one of the speaker ask about the unemployed single man grant. Yes, I want to answer that first before I go to the young girls having a license of guns. As SARA, we have a policy of unemployed single man grant. We've noticed over the years that there are men that are not working, and the highest societal rate in our countries amongst men because of unemployment. So as SARA, there is a policy, as much as we know that traditionally we know men as providers. But we notice that men, they start to kill themselves because of unemployment. They resolve in drugs and also in alcohol. So we came with a policy that says men that are not working, men that are single and unemployed, we have a relief grant for you. As much as we know that the government is providing grant to women and also to men to look after their children. But we decided that as SARA, will increase that grant to 3,000 rand so that we can relieve these men. So we have that policy. I wanted to answer that first, that we do have a policy of unemployed single men grant that is going to help men to look after their families, as men are providers traditionally. Thank you. So yes, I've heard the question about the 10 Commandments, and also our leader, which is our president, she's talking about providing the license for the young girls. The reason being, we know that we are living in South Africa, that there's too much crime. 10 Commandments, girls owning guns. As much as we're bound to respect to the 10 Commandments as Christian-based organization, we cannot afford to lose the lives of the girls that are vulnerable to criminals, to the extent of their life and dignity that are left to the criminals. So we decided that we will apply the license for these girls so that they can protect themselves. We are not saying that they must kill, but they must defend themselves, as we are living in a South Africa that crime is too high because the government is failing to control crime. It is that the evidence of the current leadership are unable to protect people against criminals. So as SARA, we are saying, yes, we will apply for the license. Young girls must protect themselves. They must have a gun license to protect themselves. That is the only aim, not to destroy the Christianity and all that. But we know about the 10 Commandments. But when we check the rate of crime, and yes, we do believe in God, that God is the provider and he will provide us. But we know the state of crime in our country. Thank you. I submit.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that response from SARA. Mr. Dagada, I did see that you had dropped off at some point, but I hope that you were able to catch some of the initial questions. Do you have any initial responses to some of the questions that were posed? Part of them were around the types of partnerships and coalitions you're willing to enter into, the space created for young men or unemployed men or men in general in your party as it relates to their role in our society. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Apologies, I can't switch on my device. I'm just traveling. But our stance on coalitions or working with other political parties is that we are open and we are willing to work with other Christian political parties. For us, the most important thing is putting people first. We want, politicians to start doing what they're actually employed to do, which is to solve the community's problem, to solve people's problems. So it becomes very important that we when we look at working with political parties, that's what we look at, and also the Christian aspect as well, as we understand that Christian principles lead and guide us to follow that. With regards to the male sort of questions, the male-aligned questions, we truly believe that a training must be done for South African males. We believe that a man is the head of the family, and we believe that as a result of that, there must be a training as to what that means and how to carry out that responsibility. We find that a lot of gender-based violence, a lot of crimes that we're seeing are usually coming or stemming out of a place that men have never had the opportunity to be. It's a vicious cycle where the father was not there, and you find that the man had to grow up alone, and sort of he ends up saying, I was raised by the streets, or he ends up going into gangsterism, or a gang finds him. So we really want to make sure that we raise that responsibility that men have to play within society. And especially looking at the fact that if men are equipped properly to take care of the family, And I'm mentioning men because the question was about men, so nobody must think that I'm saying that women are not going to be equipped. I'm just answering the question that if men were equipped properly with skills, with training, and most importantly, with the renewal of the mind as to their responsibility and what they are and what they can do in society, then we would see that the family unit would be protected, and the family unit, because we believe that, God works through families. And if the family unit is protected, the mother and father are okay, usually the children, everything flows perfectly from there. But once the family unit is targeted, and you find that the male figure is targeted and the head, him as the head of the family is eliminated, or, he goes astray, then you find that there becomes lots of issues that we now have to deal with society. So we truly believe that more investment must be made in educating men to understand their responsibility, to also see what good they can actually produce. Because, looking into the statistics of what usually happens with most of the men that are not raised by their families or their parents, many of them are not aware of what the positive implications are on their children when they are raised with a family figure, and also educating them to say, what is it that they have to do? Because many of them abscond because in their lives, they were sort of left to be raised by their grandmother or whatever. So many of them don't have that responsibility, or they don't take that responsibility because they don't even know what to do. They've never had a father figure example. So it becomes important to educate the man, to empower the man, and to also ensure that we deal with the psychological mental blocks that cause these things to happen, because we need to be honest about the fact that majority of the rapes in this country are done by men, majority of the murders in this country are done by men, majority of the violence is done by men, and we must address that root and be able to fix that. And without even saying I'm definitely for the empowerment of women as well, I just wanted to focus on the male aspect as the question asked. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much, Mr. Dekada, for your responses. If I may just double check that I've not left. We've had the ACDP respond, we've had ATM, we've had Arrive, and we've had SARA as well. I'm going to take one final round of questions from everyone on the chat, as well as those who have raised their hands. We'd like to conclude by 8:30. So before we take a round of questions, I'd like to just double check with Dr. Mtimka, if you have any thoughts at this point of the discussion. What have you picked up? What are some of the things that are interesting for you from the propositions? And perhaps a bit of analysis, if I may ask your indulgence around the lack of a singular representative voice for Christians. Is that something that's necessary? Are we trying to hamper down on the ability of other political parties to exist, but also the spectrum that exists even in Christianity in terms of the space for governance?
Thank you. Thank you, Spa. I'm so sorry. I had already withdrawn in the discussion. I was just about so I'm actually deflated at the moment. But I think on two things that came up, that we cannot want to build a Christian state here in South Africa. Jesus, when he comes back, in fact, even when he was here, he wasn't talking about establishing a religion. He talked about building a kingdom. And that's why he didn't refer to himself by any religious term. And in fact, did not see the religious establishment of the time as his competitors. He makes reference to kingdom, and a kingdom in which the bear and the lion will live together. So we mustn't be too fixated on this idea of in order for people to exchange hands and work together, they should be professing Christianity. And I don't think that it's good to read into public office the idea of equally yoking in the same way that we do in our personal relationships. Daniel was served four empires of different religions that had oppressed his people, and he served with a spirit of excellence. And I think that that's what the Lord also wants from us that the spirit of excellence, obviously knowledge, that we love him and we honor him, is the one that wins people over, and not wanting to be fundamentalist in our conduct and compel everybody. Anyway, let me not draw more from my tiredness. Thank you, sir.
Brian, you're muted. You're muted.
I just made the biggest mistake for an online platform to speak whilst muted. Thank you, Mr. Owen, for a reminder. I want to say thank you to Dr. Mtimka from the Nelson Mandela University for your time and for the insights that you've been able to provide to us. As Mr. Mtimka had indicated earlier in the chat, his earlier presentation will be shared to Leanne, and I hope that you all have Leanne's contact somehow, but it will be distributed to various people accordingly. We have 3 hands that are asking questions at the moment. I may have missed some questions in the chat, but there was a question specifically in the YouTube page speaking to the political party's ability to deal with crime. How do you handle crime in South Africa is one of the first questions. And then, of course, we have a question now in the chat that comes from Mr. Owen. He says a key differentiator between parties is likely to be their policies around the economy. This includes ideas of nationalism, socialism, free market economy, as well as land ownership as one of those things, and accordingly, ownership of resources such as mines. What are some of the positions of political parties on the specific? Let me take the hands that have been raised. Let me start with you, Mr. Mthembu.
Thank you very much, Chair. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've realized that most of the question that I had were answered. In actual fact, the comments were made on the chat room. But I'm a little bit worried about some of the comments that were uttered here. These are Christian political parties that are advocating for Christian values and Christian principles. And some of the statements are very, very disturbing. But nevertheless, I will want to get it from especially my party, #HopeSouth for South Africa, my leader, Diane. When the current government inherited, the current party, the ruling party inherited the government of South Africa in 1994, we had about more than, I think, if my memory serves me well, there were more than 700 state-owned companies. But today you cannot even count a handful of them that are still existing, that are properly being administered. Now, today, as you are sitting here, NHI bill was signed by the president. There was also a Bella bill and so many things. The fact of the matter is that we can have a very good policies on paper, but if you don't have the strategy of the implementation and the righteous people to implement them, they mean nothing. Now, my question will be, are we ready, honestly speaking, for NHI? Are we as Christians, second part of it will be, are we just going to make noise about Bella Bila now because it's electioneering, or how are we intending to move it forward? Look, the fact of the matter, Bella Bill, it's totally against the Christian values. You look at the current situation in our schools, drugs are in our schools, children are stabbing teachers, are stabbing one another, weapons, very dangerous weapons like guns and so on in our schools. And that came precisely because the biblical studies were taken out of our schools. And that says, the Bible is very clear. The word of God is Christ himself. You took Christ out of schools, the enemy will occupy that. We see Sangomas in our schools. We see all these sorts of things. So how are we going to tackle
Okay, Mr.
issues like
Mthembu.
that? Thank you very much, my.
Yeah, thank you so much. As we are concerned with trying to finish a bit early, some of us need to attend to family matters as well, as righteous Christians do so in our households. Ms. Msomi Nondumiso, your hand is up, and then we'll have Ray Charles after you.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'd like to greet all the honorable leaders. My question is, what is our stance when it comes to the LGBTQ community, and also on the issue of abortion being something that's legal? This question is for all the political parties. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you keeping it concise as well. Mr. Charles, well, Mr. Dazel, rather. Ray Charles Dazel.
Hello, yes. I don't hear Brittany's complete statement, but my question is just regarding, everyone is talking about unity within the Christian politics and the Christians uniting. But I know from Time to Rise aside, there was so much effort done in this regard, like the One Accord with 11 points on it, that's biblical values. But so many Christians and the Christian political parties said, no, we don't want to take hands, even after meeting and trying to get a united Christian vote, and just to get the biblical values into our parliament again. And a lot of Christian and the parties just rejected it. So my stance is why, especially bigger Christian parties like the ACDP and all of that, and the effort that has been gone into it, and we don't want to unite. Why as Christians do we not want to unite? That's all that I want to say, Anya, and ask the question, why not?
All right, thank you so much. Much appreciated. We'll end with the last question from Co-M. Co-M, if you may please ask your question. Thank you.
Greetings, Chair. Chair, I wanted to ask to all the Christian parties that are represented here, especially to SARA. I'm a bit concerned. I'm not sure if there is a question either. I'm a bit concerned of this grant thing, you know, that is gonna be extended to the males of this country. Yet it is against the will of our Elohim. The man supposed to be the provider, to provide for the family. But now with the grant, maybe it's not 3,000. How does it going to fulfill the purpose of the man? And if we continue like this, as this even the godly government, as a godly government, how are we going to now implement the values? Because now the nation is in crisis. There is a murdering of women because the males are getting very angry because of this thing of there is no job opportunities that are provided to them in order for them to provide for the families.
All right. Thank you very much for your question.
Can that matter be answered well?
All right. We're not sure how well it's going to be answered, but it will definitely be answered. Thank you very much for that question. I would like to apologize for those who've just raised their hands now, like at least like 10 seconds ago. We had that the hand from Core M was the last hand on the basis of the time allocation that we have for today's session. I'm going to ask for our political party representatives to take a maximum of 3 minutes in response to the very varied subject matter that they've been asked to to talk to. But primarily, perhaps in the last minute of those 3 minutes, to offer us a parting message, so that we can be able to say, perhaps this is one of the considerations that we have as citizens to potentially vote for you on the day. I'm going to start with Ms. Kubai from SARA. We'll have then Ms. Ntloni from GSA. We'll go with Diane from Hope for SA. And I think if our colleague from ATM is still there, we'll go with him as well. And then we'll end with the ACDP. Yes, Ms. Kubai.
Thank you very much. I want to answer.
If I may please, sorry, if I may please remind us to just, if I may please remind us to please have our cameras on just for this last session when we respond to questions, so that people have, sometimes it helps to have visuals. Some of us are visual learners. So we have a face that we attach to the party that's speaking. Thank you very much, ma'am. So there were questions around crime. There was a question around the economy. What are the principles upon which you base the economy? And attached to that, a question around state-owned enterprises. Question around the NHI. Are we ready? Are we able to embrace it? There was a question around sustained activism on bills such as Bella. The person who asked the question spoke to the sense that perhaps Bella is not reflective of Christian values as they understand it. Then, of course, there were 3 very significant questions around the LGBTQIA community, the role of legal abortion, as well as the idea of unity. As Mr. Carl was, Mr. Dazel was speaking to, Charles, rather. Yes, Ms. Marisa, apologies for that.
Thank you very much. Yes, I want to ask, someone asked about the single man grant. That is, it is against the Bible, because the Bible says the man should provide. Yes, a man should provide, but when you check currently, we have a high rate of unemployment, and we are trying to resolve the situation by restoring the dignity of a man, by providing the unemployment single grant to men. Number 2, you talk about the Bella bill. Someone asked about the abortion is illegal. Abortion is illegal when it comes to Christianity, because the Bible, yes, as I've said in the beginning, God, the 10 Commandments, that it say we shall not kill. So if the government talks about the abortion to our children, if you check one of the in a Bella bill, it says children are allowed in the age of 12 years to do abortion without the consent of the parents, which is wrong to us, which means government are taking powers from the parents. Parents does not have a right anymore to discipline or to talk to their children. So we are saying, as Christian, as SARA, we oppose to the younger children. We need to focus as a country in the level of our education. But when you check, the government is focusing on the transgender, gays, and lesbian. Yes, it is our right, it's in our constitution. But as SARA, we are saying to government that teaching our children at an early age the rights to do transgender, can we focus on the education that will help our children to be better in future? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us for today's session. We really appreciate SARA's availability. I'd like to go with GSA next, please, Mr. Peter Ntloni. Mr. Ntloni, I'm not sure why the sound is affected in this way. If you can try to speak again, maybe if you can remove your earphones or headsets and speak using the mic off your device, because we can't hear you at all.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right, thank you very much once more. And I think the question that I would love to address is obviously it's the question on highlights the question of NHI that has been signed by the President of the Republic sometimes today. And I think the observation from GSA point of view is that everyone should have an access of health, a good health. It's a question of if you want to have, a prominent country in terms of economic growth and the balance of forces, the health must be part of one of the things that are in the forefront for a good governance. You cannot compromise the life of individual. I know the questions around that. It's a question of, generally speaking, people don't like change. However, there are some pros and cons on the subject itself. Okay, it's a bill that has been signed by the President of the Republic. But on the other side, what about those people who are in the remote areas, who can't take them, who doesn't have medical aid like you and me? So it would be an advantage for majority of people in South Africa who could not get an access of free, so-called access to good health facilities. So I think one way or another, let us learn to unlearn some cultural practice and some, the norms that perhaps certain things are meant for certain people. If we want a sustainable country and balance of the forces in all angles, let the issue of health be addressed by our government. It may have been a situation of maybe to review how the policy model itself has been designed. But for as long as it is going to be able to benefit the people of South Africa, I think I highly support the NHI, although I know that people have got so many concerns. I don't mean to repeat myself, but people that are paying medical aid like myself, Discovery, I don't think that I won't have an access to a GP or a private doctor with my medical aid, with an understanding that Discovery is a private entity, which my prescription or my subscription rather, the contract is between me and them. The other factors and the pros and the cons of it, let us allow the process to unfold. But I don't think government would do such a risk, because remember, this issue of NHI, it was a long pending matter, because the private sector had some concerns, and obviously the other people with certain perceptions around this. But in my own observation, in conclusion, at least people must be able to benefit from good health system, and perhaps it will change public hospitalism mentality, because if you go to private hospitals, to public hospital, it's worse that is happening there. There are no medication, there are no health facilities, which is the machine that are supposedly to be used to help people. Perhaps now, if there are enough money that is channeled there, people should be able to have an access to good health and be treated well. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ntloni. We really appreciate GSA's availability as well, and we appreciate the insights that you've shared with us today. May I ask next to have a representative from Hope for SA, please.
Hi, thank you once again. And yes, as my last chat, let me just touch briefly on two subjects, and then I think I will elaborate on abortion and LGBTQ. So just briefly on crime, if we just look at statistics, the main thing about crime, or one of the big things about crime that one needs to look at, is from the time that the perpetrator is caught till when the judgment is made. So only 10% of people actually getting through the courts of law at the end of the day, so that we're not, that's one of the things that's not helping us stop crime, is that we're catching the perpetrator, but the paper trail logistics that go with it and the various other facets that should be working are not working. So they never get to the court and they never get judgment. And so that's really a big thing with crime in the country, amongst others. So I'm not going to touch on more than that, but just mention that on crime. And then if we're looking at the hate crime, the Bella Bill, the NHI, these are all part of the woke society in the New World Order. Apologies to my colleague that spoke just before, but the NHI is just going to cripple our economy even further. So if we have a look at it, so those of you who haven't read it, please have a read. It is going to cripple the economy. We've got to build the economy. And I agree, we've got to have good hospitals. Our government hospitals need to be jacked up, but we're not going to get that right by stealing from other hospitals. So we have to look at it from the right angle. And then what I really want to concentrate or mention here is the abortion and the LGBTQI. All people are God's children, God's creation. So first and foremost, we separate the deed from the person and we continue to love that person through whatever they go. None of us are innocent, none of us are perfect. But we have to have a look at the fact that abortion is killing a baby. There's no doubt about it biologically. In my private world, I work in the industrial psych world and also with wellness. So I know the biology of babies. And at 10 days, a baby has a nervous system. 10 days in the womb, full nervous system, can feel pain. And those beautiful stem cells grow into the most beautiful baby at the end of the day. And we know that abortion is death, and it's definitely against God's word. However, having said that, we also know that a lot of young mothers get put in critical positions or into positions where they don't even know or are not told the truth about a baby and often go through abortions. I had the privilege years ago of working in many NGOs, and one of the things that I worked with were mothers that were either going to abort or had aborted. And the same story always came about. They never knew, then they found out, and now they cannot believe they killed their own baby. We have to look at the bigger picture for our children. So when our children and our young girls are in crisis, we need to come alongside of them with social workers, with help, with godly governance, and help them understand the truth and then walk that line with them so that they can make concrete decisions to birth that beautiful child. Because a child should never pay the death penalty for a rapist or an unwanted pregnancy. I mean, you would not go and kill your one son because the other son did an ill. We just would not do that. So we should not be doing that. But what we should do is come alongside those young ladies and educate them so that they understand, and also give them that hope that bringing that child into the world and maybe giving it up for adoption would give a family another baby. I know a story of a lady that was raped that was told years ago, and she was badly raped, and it was different cultures, and she gave her child up for adoption, and that child came back approximately 30 years later, and he said to her, "Thank you for carrying me and giving me to another family." He was a successful, valuable entrepreneur to society. And so we have to look beyond that, but we have to also educate our people, because we're hurting our young girls. Most of our young girls in society have got suicidal problems, drug problems, all sorts of problems. Why? Because of things like abortion and not knowing what was right and then finding out later. So this is not about pointing fingers at the mistake, but helping society to grow healthy again. And then the LGBTQ, exactly the same. We love the sinner, not the sin. And all children go through identity crisis around about the age of 14, 15. We shouldn't use that as a manipulative tool to tell a boy is a girl or a girl is a boy. That's absolute nonsense, because we will never be happy. We will always walk with a hole in our heart if we do not do what God intended us to do. We will always have a cognitive dissonance within ourselves, where we have that conflict within ourselves when we are not in line. So once again, we are not pointing fingers, but we want to bring people into a place where they can come into a wholeness and they can flourish before the Lord. So that is what we'll do, and we'll not allow either of these to affect our young society in any way, form, or means. Thank you very much for having me on the show, and God bless you guys.
Thank you very much, Ms. Diane Clare from Hope for SA. Can we now have a representative from the ATM? I think Zamani is back. You're able to give your final closing remarks. After the ATM, we'll have Arise SA, and then we'll have the ACDP.
Thank you so much. As we are closing today, I think the 7th administration is going to be one of the most interesting administrations, because children of God have said, we are not going to stay on the fence or watch, but we're going to be active participants in the emancipation of God's children. I think that alone is going to be exciting. The 6th administration started with the former Chief Justice Mogoeng, who said Elo must pray to his own God, and he knelt down in Parliament and opened with a powerful prayer. Now, it is not going to be an issue of just one or two people, but as a collective, as a body of Christ, we are going to take on the space and put on the altar of the Most High in the midst of everything else that is going to be happening there. So that for once, this country, each and every step that we are going to take will be ordered by God, so that we are able to liberate South Africa fully. The story of Joseph, when he assumed leadership in Egypt, he was not only a prophet, but he was an individual who was able to develop a 14-year strategic plan that saw Egypt going from the 7 years of plenty to 7 years of nothingness. There was abundance to a point that the whole world started going where Egypt was. I think that with each and every one of us who is going to be representing the body of Christ in Parliament, we will be able to make South Africa a prosperous nation. The only cry and the only plea, if 80% of the population is a population of Christians in this country, then this means there is not a single president of this country who was elected without the Christian voice having the final say. The time has come for that same Christian body, the majority of the people in this country, to actually make a decision. Are we going to continue to throw this country to the dungeon of lions, or is it time for us to actually make a choice, and a right choice? I think our duty in the remaining days is to go to each and every constituency. Every church, every pastor must be vocal about participation. We may not fully have given a full narrative of who we are, regardless of who you choose, but choose, and choose within those who you identify with, because the lack of a Christian voice in that parliament would speak to the detriment of this country, would speak to the total declaration of the state to a state of paralysis, never to rise up again. I think one may say it's the 7th administration, the perfect number. Maybe this is the time. We know for a fact, in fact, not just maybe, this is the time things start turning around. As the African Transformation Movement, we're fully committed to the emancipation of the people of this country holistically. Kusukela, early childhood development all the way up, and we are going to ensure that we have, as we have done in the past 5 years, that we hold every power and principality accountable, so that every individual in this country may experience true liberation. So as we are closing today, I'm not going to go to my manifesto as I would normally, but as I'm closing off today, I say I'm appealing to every Christian not to be a passive participant in our emancipation, but we need to be active participants in our emancipation. No law shall ever be made without us. No implementation of any program will be done without us. There will never be a time and again any policy that is being introduced into the space without us having a say. The time for God is now. The time for the kingdom is now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chona. Thank you very much to Mr. Chona and the African Transformation Movement. We'd like to ask Mr. Mpho if you're still with us for your closing remarks.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much. I think a lot of points have been said, so I don't want to repeat because of time. But the one thing I do want to mention is on the healthcare of the country. And I think it's important to note that the reason why our healthcare happens in this country, the way that it's so bad, is because of drugs and alcohol. Alcohol companies literally get our people back into hospital. And also the food that our people are given, and also the health effects of the things that our people have had to take over the years. This is the reason why many of our people are sick. And as a result of this, when you look at things like NHI, people really don't want to focus on the underlying issue, to say the human being, according to what the Bible says, should not be sick. We should be living in health. We should be eating healthy food that nourishes our body. So really where we want to play as a Rise South Africa is to say, before we even get to the conversation of NHI, let's fix what our people are eating. Many of our people are eating illegal or fake goods from Pakistani shops of people that are not registered to be citizens in the country. We don't know how they got in, and our people are falling sick. Many of our people are drinking alcohol. Alcohol is marketed to them on every corner, wherever they go. And it becomes quite important for us to be able to look at these things and say, these are the things that are causing health issues in our country. Because if you look at many of the people that are seated in hospitals, many of them are alcoholics. Many of them have been on drug abuse. Many of them do suffer malnutrition, many of the children. So really it's to say that, yes, we believe that healthcare is important for everybody, but let's also deal with the fundamental issues that are getting people sick and that are getting them to go to hospital. And let's fix those fundamental issues. And another important aspect that I think we never really touch on in Arise South Africa, I always boldly say it, is that South Africans are meant to be rich. And that's one thing that it seems along the whole journey of politics that we've lost as a nation. If you go to Dubai and you ask them, how are they prospering? They'll tell you that Allah meant for us to be rich. Allah meant for us to have more than enough so that we can give to everybody else. And you look at what they're doing, they literally have, they're rich and they're giving to everybody else. But when you come to South Africans, it's like Christians are trying to say that, no, God made a mistake. In South Africa, he didn't give us enough, or we have a shortage, or we have a lack, or whatever. And I think that's a very wrong and demonic mentality. We need to get our people to a point of abundance. We need to get our people to a point of ownership. We need to get our people to a point of producing the factors that produce goods. We need to get our people in power to the point where they're able to create wealth for themselves. So we're very big as a Rise South Africa to say the Abrahamic blessing must function in every citizen's life, where you find that South Africans are known to say, if you look at a South African person, you're looking at a wealthy person, because their nation has taught them how to make wealth and also how to keep it, and also how to keep it even for their children's generation. So we're really zealous about proving the principles of God, that they work and that they can be used even in this generation. And I believe that going into the elections, I truly believe that it's important that we conscientize the church. And I want to end it off here by saying every single leader that is in a church, it's not enough that we meet on Zoom and we discuss these things, but in the church you find that people don't know about voting or not going to vote. So I want to ask that, every single leader that's part of a church and the different Christian constituencies that are here, that we go back into the church and conscientize the church to vote for Christian political parties. Those of us that are here have had amazing ideas, and I want to thank everybody, and also thank the great platform that we've been given. It's not very often that we get these platforms. So thank you so much for this platform, and I truly hope that the platform grows to a bigger extent, because these are the needed platforms. So thank you so much to everybody that's been involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tagada, for your presentation and for letting us know the offerings from Arise South Africa. We're now ending off with Councillor Jamil Esop from the African Christian Democratic Party, ACDP.
Thanks, Brian. Brian, in 1994, South Africa had the opportunity to go to the polls and to vote in a government. In 1994, the vast majority that right now are arising and saying there's a need for godly governance had taken a vote, and a vote that ensured that this particular government called South Africa is under the rulership of the ANC. What has failed South Africa today is not Christian leaders. What has failed South Africa today is the active involvement of the church when it comes to producing ethical leaders to serve on all spheres of governance. The reason I say that boldly is because within the ANC, there are also Christians that are involved, but when they do vote, they do not vote according to godly biblical values. And so the church in 1994 had failed this nation and ensured that when the ruling party came into power, the BEE policy which they have implemented then, instead of competency, instead of ethical leaders being at the forefront, we saw that the ruling party ensured friends, colleagues, and families who did not have the skill and competency were given positions in all spheres of governance. The reason why state-owned entities are failing and collapsing is because friends have been given the position to manage rather than competency and qualification. And so South Africa is in a crisis 30 years down the line because the church failed to produce the ethical leaders. If I'm correct, many pastors on the platform, and I'm not a pastor, but I'm a born again believer, 24 years coming from the Islamic background. I want to say to South Africans and to the Christians here that government is about ensuring your policy and your manifesto is driven to ensure that the nation is progressive. Christians have allowed this nation to go into another pathway where wickedness has been at the forefront of government legislature. It was the ACDP who protected South Africans. It was the ACDP who protected godly values. It was the ACDP who did not sign the Constitution in 1994 because God was not at the forefront. So when political parties are saying we need God to be back in the corridors of parliament, the ACDP has been there. You're not going to be the first party to go and take biblical values to parliament. No, we've been there since 1994, and we're trying to get this country to understand the value of why you prioritize God and why you need righteous leaders in this country. In order to fix South Africa, we have to ensure that the church comes to a place of producing Daniels. Daniel was a man who was uncompromising. Daniel was a man who was raised within the church, sent to the corridors of parliament so that he can stand firm on his values and he can ensure that those values will be at the forefront of policy making. The ACDP has been that Daniel since 1994. Sadly, the church, who some of them have said, we acknowledge the work of the ACDP, they're a 1% party, and they're speaking the same language as the ACDP, should have come on board and joined the ACDP so that instead of us being a 1% party, we can become the majority in South Africa as we have representation in all 9 provinces since 1994. Imagine if all these Christian political parties came under the banner of ACDP, we could have turned this nation around from election to election. But as we are fully aware, when it comes to national and provincial elections, it is the Christians that split the vote and make sure the ANC stays in power. And my prayer as one who has been born again is that the church needs to come and do an introspection to ensure, there was a time in Moses' life when he was getting battle weary, that his right hand and his left hand needed to be upheld. And so the ACDP has been fighting for Christians at the forefront. And if you think we have not been doing enough, then become the brother that will hold our right hand, become the sister that will hold our right hand, become the brother that will hold our left hand, become the sister that will hold our left hand, to ensure that you strengthen us in this journey to bring godly values to South Africa. And so my encouragement as we close, that the problem in South Africa is just not because we do not have Christian representation in parliament. The problem in South Africa is that the church has not produced Daniels, those that can stand firm on the political mountain to show they are uncompromising, those that can drink from the wells of God and ensure that the policies they make will be the ones that God had ordained. And so the ACDP is saying, come the 29th of May, we have been here for the past 30 years, become that elder brother, that elder sister that will hold our right and our left hand and ensure that our 1% will become the majority in South Africa so that we can turn this nation to become a righteous nation once again. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Esop and the ACDP, for your presentation as well. We thank all of the political parties that were able to be a part of this session. The insights, the thoughts, the verses that you've been able to share today is very important in the ways in which people consider what decisions that they take for themselves, their families, and their futures in the country that we're a part of. Thank you very much to Leanne, whose child, whose baby this was, who birthed the idea and was able to get us to a point where we're able to host today's session. We were hoping that at some point it would have been in person, but recognizing the different schedules for different leaders, as well as everyone else concerned in terms of the campaign season, perhaps a Zoom session might have been useful. And so we found joy with the Zoom session, and we're here now, and we appreciate all of the different levels of participation. We are looking forward to seeing how you all are able to be represented both in Parliament and in the provincial legislatures in the various ways and mechanisms. And we hope that your voice will not be lost, regardless of the number or percentage of votes that you get or do not get. And ultimately that we find ways to ensure that we hold each other accountable on the journey in governance, on the journey in our various political aspirations. Thank you very much, and we hope that you have a good night. Hope that you're able to pray that South Africa sees a better future. Of course, your participation actively will make that difference. Thank you very much, and good night.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Good night, and thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you and good night.
Shalom.
Some of us